Success isn't given, it's earned. And earning it means becoming the person who deserves it. The bottom line is where we cut through the chaos to simplify success, uncovering the strategies, mindset, and resilience it takes to win. Real stories, expert insights, and practical tools. Because the only way to the top is by putting in the work. This is The Bottom Line.
Welcome back to The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Ryan Herpin, and joining me today is Mr. Ben Sinclair, a branch manager and senior loan officer with Highlands Residential Mortgage. I've had the privilege of getting to know Ben over the course of the last year, of networking together, building a friendship, and just learning how we can help serve each other in our journeys in business. And Ben, it's such an honor to have you here with us today. I'm excited to dive in and get some more of that beautiful information that you have to share.
Awesome, man. I'm enjoying it as well, Ryan. This is great, man.
So I want to get more into that nitty gritty and I want to focus on the topic of why relationships matter more than transactions. So I think it's going to be valuable to kind of dive in and let's start with the foundation. Why do you believe relationships are more valuable than transactions in business?
Well, over my career of the past, 20 plus years, I've just seen them help me. I didn't have somebody like you, Ryan, who was guiding me through, or coaching me through. I got into coaching later, but I mean, my first closer when I was an underwriter before I was originating, the first loan I cleared to close, I sent down to her to close, and I hadn't done a whole lot of underwriting. It didn't have an appraisal or survey, right? Which is kind of important when you do a mortgage. And she called me up on the phone, from downstairs and said some really nice things to me. And I took her to lunch like every day for the next 30 days. And she taught me the business. And that bank got bought and sold and everything. And kind of lost touch with Kim and bumped into her, 10 years later. And she was the regional sales director for a builder. And that previous relationship, is still going on today, 10 years down the road. And it never had anything to do with sales. So, through examples like that, I just learned kind of through osmosis that, the relationships kept me going, especially when it slows down. Mortgage is cyclical for sure. And, sometimes we're rich and other times we're looking for the next deal. It never seems like it's steady. It always seems like it's feast or famine.
But I like that. Yeah. I think the way that you put that actually is kind of gold, man. You just dropped some solid gold there, because just like before, you pinpointed kind of some of the beauty in how that relationship fans out and builds into something so much more over time. And it to me, it struck the thought and kind of that mentality that I was taught early on was you don't buy from someone you don't know, like, and trust.
Correct.
Right. So once you have established that first, it makes it a whole lot easier to do business with somebody. So have you seen firsthand how strong relationships have led to more business opportunities for you outside of that early stage to like even now?
Sure. I mean, the people I network with now, I just got referred by an insurance agent, a new title company connection. I'm doing a class at a new real estate office I've never been in on April 15th, and that happened over the past week. And it's because of a great relationship with somebody I send a ton of business to. We refer our customers to everybody needs homeowners insurance. And she had sat down with a title company, and mentioned to me, and the lady said, yeah, I'd love to meet him. And, we're already doing something together. And I haven't even met her face to face. It's just been phone conversations yet. So, the relationship, it keeps on giving, right? Everybody, you can only have so many relationships. And if you want to grow your business, each one of those persons has so many relationships, and that's the way you do it, right? If I can handle, 200 relationships, you can handle 200 relationships. Well, 200 times 200, that's how many potential relationships you have. And that's the way you've got to look at it. You spend the time, and you don't really have to sell. I mean, you have to sell when you have a client, and you're selling different loan programs and all that, but relationships is not selling. Relationships is getting to know people, finding out where they need help, where you can bring value to them, where they can bring value to you. And building on that. And, they're hot and cold. I mean, sometimes you've got one thing going with somebody that, and then it kind of wanes, like the story I told before about my closer. I reconnected with her after probably 7 or 8 years at a funeral of all places.
Wow.
Because we had a mutual relationship with somebody who passed. And so that relationship brought us together and rekindled our relationship. So you just never know. Every opportunity, every person you meet is an opportunity. You have to have that mindset. And I enjoy people. I'm curious about them. Like your story is great. I've enjoyed talking to you, getting to know you, your background, where you come from. I always like to talk to people who wrestle. That's great, man. So because we didn't have that in Texas.
Right. Yeah. That's something that's still pretty young in Texas, where I'm from. That's like run of the mill. Every rambunctious young man really wants to be in it, even women.
Right.
But while we're really kind of looking at this topic of why relationships matter more than transactions, it made me think of something that's a little bit outside of the box, but valuable. It's something I haven't really chewed on too much before. But in a transactional relationship, it's, something goes wrong, it can completely tank all opportunities. It can cut off the possibility of developing a relationship. And, you can obviously lose business that way. In your opinion, how do building those relationships help when things go wrong? Like, let's say you make a mistake or you mess up, or, does that relationship give you some grace?
It definitely gives you some grace. And it's mortgages and real estate's unforgiving. It's a very unforgiving business, but if you've built up a relationship over time with somebody, you've got some grace. If it's the first transaction, you might be sunk, but if it's the 10th transaction and you've performed well in the previous 9, you've got a shot, and you got to be transparent and upfront and set proper expectations. I mean, you can't quit doing your job just because of the relationship, but that relationship helps, and you have a connection where you can talk to somebody, explain what happened. Because we're human, we make mistakes. We try to be perfect. That's what drives us crazy. But the relationship, a good, strong relationship can endure that. There's ups and downs in the market. Rates change quick. There's all kinds of pitfalls when you run through a mortgage transaction, right? And you're not just I'm relying on appraisers, title companies, real estate agents, buyers and sellers. So it's a lot of things to juggle. But every one of those people is a potential new relationship, every time you get a transaction. So, you've got half a dozen relationships you can get on just about every transaction. So a good relationship will survive a mistake. You can push through that and get past it. And, you might have to listen to them tell you about it for a little while, but you're still doing business with it.
I think you brought up a really good point. That relationship keeps humanity in the mix.
Yes.
When you really think about it, it's just like, my goodness, I've dealt with all sorts of different businesses and different kinds of deals, but even as a consumer, right? I've had work done to my house where, a contractor made a mistake, they messed something up, and, it caused a problem. My wife was unhappy. It looked like crap or whatever it may have been at the time. But because I had built a relationship with that contractor, it was like, oh, dude, it's okay. Like, I get it. Mistakes happen. No big deal. Let's just make it right. And because of that relationship, that mistake didn't compromise my belief and trust in this person, in their business, and in their work ethic. It just brought the humanity back out of, oh yeah, I make mistakes too. But if it was someone that didn't care to have that relationship with me, it would have been hard to overlook the humanity aspect. 'Cause it's like, it feels very transactional. It feels like they're just trying to get my money instead of that connection, right?
And a transactional person might not have fixed the problem, and your relationship person does fix the problem, and it builds more respect in the relationship. Sometimes problems are opportunities, or mistakes.
Ooh.
To show what you're made of. You call a real estate agent up and say, hey, we ordered the wrong appraisal. You own it. That they appreciate the transparency. You give them, this is when we can get it fixed. This is how we're going to get it fixed. They understand that mistakes happen too. And even with new relationships, I've had a couple of those where the fact that we handled the problem correctly, built on the relationship. So problems, mistakes can be opportunities as well. You got, and you got to have a glass half full, man. You got to believe in abundance, not scarcity, right? And those things all lead into, relationship. And it starts before the workday for me. You know, you got to get your mind right. You got to read whatever it is that gets you at peace. You got to, with me, I've got to exercise or I feel like a slug all day. So those things all lead into the attitude you need to build good relationships, but it needs to be positive, happy. You need to call people by their name. And, you need to learn about them. I mean, learn about them because people are interesting. I mean, that's the best part of my job is the people, hands down.
Man, I tell you, I feel like I should be taking notes right now. There's a few things you said that it's like, oh man, like I need to revisit that idea, or I need to think about where I'm incorporating that. And like you said, and one of the biggest pieces of just pure wisdom you just dropped there is sometimes problems and mistakes are opportunities to build an even stronger relationship. Sometimes a mistake turns into a way to show what you're made of, show your work ethic, show your compassion and care. And that can build even, the strongest relationships. I mean, think of it like this, right? When we're teaching our children to do things, they make a mistake. It doesn't make us love them less or care less. Sometimes it makes us proud because it gives us the opportunity for them to learn. It gives them a chance to grow and to understand something new and to be prepared for the next big mistake or issue, right? It's being human, right? I mean, we're not robots. Yes. Mistakes happen. We mess up. Sometimes we say the wrong thing. I've said the wrong thing plenty of times. I've definitely offended a boardroom before. And, it bit me in the butt for a little bit. But after a while, they're like, oh, he's just really passionate.
Yeah. I've learned a lot of things the hard way, Ryan.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, especially as an athlete, you learn.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the relationship sense, just like in any kind of sport, you've got to have good relationships with your team. Otherwise, that guy's not going to block for you. Right. And that's going to be a big problem.
Right. And coaches have to tell you, tell you hard things, like, you're screwing this up, Ben. You need to do better. I mean, you got to have a good enough relationship to handle that negative criticism, which I'm not sure they all cared, but
I don't know about you, man. I'm loving this conversation. I'm excited that we get to continue this for another few big major questions that are going to be really impactful. So everyone that's watching, don't go anywhere. If you haven't grabbed that pen and pad yet, you need to do that, because we're going to be right back to dive into that bottom line and figure out more about the value of these relationships with Mr. Ben Sinclair.